welcome to our webcast. And yeah, we are happy to host this webinar, the August edition for threat detection highlights. So we are rolling out new updates and new detection updates to our platform every month, and we would like to communicate this in the best way to you, to our audience. And this webinar is going to be recorded, so we can share the recording after the webinar. And we will have some time at the end for Q&A. So feel free to drop your questions here on the chat. The first bucket is the VTIs, and the second bucket here is around the phishing analysis, so especially smart link detonation triggers. After that, we will provide an overview of the updated ERA rules and new ERA rules in the platform. And we will talk about specific malware families. We'll talk about the threat landscape. So lastly, my colleague Patrick has prepared a great demo for you guys. We'll speak about new configuration extractor for Stealc and run a demo. All right, let's start with VTIs without further ado. So last month, you may remember we introduced detections for Windows Defender tampering. It's kind of related. Today, we want to start with a specific VTI, again, around Windows Defender. This time, attackers modifying Defender configurations via PowerShell. And why this matters, it's simply to evade detection, again. And attackers often disable key security features in Windows Defender, one of the most common endpoint security tools, obviously, out there. And this is documented in the MITRE ATT&CK framework under defense evasion. So T1562. And by turning off protections like real-time monitoring, script scanning, they kind of create a pathway for it to operate undetected. And here, there are more parameters we monitor, but some key parameters to watch. Just to give you an idea, the disable real-time monitoring, which shut down the real-time protection, leaving the system exposed. And another one, disabling script scanning. So this allows malicious scripts to run freely. And another one here is the enabling controlled folder access. Actually, this is especially removing the ransomware safeguards in place. So now the new VTI can present this behavior on the report clearly, so within the defense evasion category. And with that, I would like to pass the mic to Patrick to speak about the VTI around certutil.exe, which is most of people call this as LOLBin MVP. So yeah, I will let Patrick to speak about the significance of this one.
All right, thank you, Ertu. Yeah, let's look into the next one on our list here for today, which is the detection of using certutil as a living of the land binary. I guess nearly everyone is familiar with the certutil executable because it's essentially part of each default Windows installation, and it's also primarily being used to deal and handle certificates, right? That also already is kind of explained by the name itself. Certutil being abused as a LOLBin binary is actually nothing pretty new. We have already seen this in the past where they have used it to, for example, download malicious files. However, in some recent attacks, we have identified some completely new ways on how this binary has been abused. So while looking through some samples, we have identified an analysis report where we have seen certutil is being used to decode a file. And of course, imagine whenever you have to deal with certificates, it's quite obvious that certutil has to have this functionality to be able to encode and decode files because certificates are usually encoded. However, what catched our eye here especially was the fact that the file that has been decoded was dropped and written down to the disk and executed afterwards. So essentially, I would never expect that neither a certificate or something else that is decoded is executed afterwards. So in this case, what happened exactly is a binary got embedded into a X509 certificate revocation list, got decoded via the certutil binary and executed afterwards. It's of course completely, not intended use case of this lol bin. So we essentially added 2 new VTIs to detect this behavior properly. First VTI is very low scoring, and you can see it on the right corner here on our slides. It's just a VTI that triggers whenever certutil is being used to decode a file. As mentioned, it's completely legitimate behavior, but though it still provides very important and informative or valuable information to the analysis report. The second VTI that we have added here is on the left side below, and it's a high scoring VTI with a score of 4, which means whenever we see the behavior of a file being decoded with certutil and the dropped file is executed afterwards, we are going to fire off this VTI, because this usually means that something nasty is going on here. It's likely unusual, right, that any kind of certificate or revocation list is getting executed once it has been decoded. Well, with that being said, that's everything for the living of the land binary side, and I would hand it back to Ertu again.
Thanks, Patrick. Great update. So the next category, the next bucket here, as we mentioned before, is the phishing and smart link detonation update. We have a quick update here. So, I mean, overall, detecting of phishing URLs continues to be a challenge for email security tools. So the complexity arises, especially when URLs appear legitimate, and that makes it harder to identify the malicious intent behind them. So while we aim to enhance our detection capabilities, we must also be mindful of the balance needed to avoid false positives on one hand, and at the same time consuming analysis resources efficiently. So here is where smart link detonation comes into play, as we put it here with the acronym SLD. So we need to pick the right URLs to detonate. And recently, a particular area of concern has been the use of click tracking URLs commonly provided by vendors like Constant Contact for marketing purposes. So these URLs, although designed for legitimate marketing, are increasingly being exploited in phishing attacks due to their frequent use in malicious activities. Actually, this is such an extent that Office 365 and the email security integrated in that actually blocked all the URLs related to Constant Contact. So, I mean, the idea here is really to better catch these deceptive phishing attempts. And we added a new trigger around this. And there will be a recursive submission process now, for example, that would allow us to uncover hidden malicious content more effectively. So that's the new update on this front. And now the new URL rules, and we will talk about the specific malware family. So as we dive deeper, I would like to put all our cards on the table right now, and I would like to take a close look at the specific malware families we are up against. So each of these has its own way, and we have seen them adapt and evolve. And in this slide, I laid out the key malware we focused last month. So our 6 malware families, we have added URL rules for. And now I will give you a quick rundown of what makes each one tick, and so we can understand the threat landscape a bit better. So we will be able to share some clues on what's happening. And also we will explore the latest kind of twists and turns in their behavior. And there are infostealers, loaders, as well as remote access trojans. So we will talk about all these. So the first one is the fake bat, a loader provided as malware as a service. So this kind of dominated the drive-by download landscape in the first half of 2024. And fake bat isn't just any loader, actually it's attributed to UNC 4536, so by Mandiant, financial motivated threat group related to FIN7. so who was found to be delivering it in their campaigns. And second stage payloads include, but not limited to, Iced ID, Luma, Smoke Loader, and Redline Stealer. So some of which we are gonna talk about today as well. So what really sets fake bat apart, though, it's designed to fly under the radar. So anti-detection capabilities, let's say. And it's offered as MSI and also lately MSIX format, and that allow it to bypass Google's unwanted software policy, also slipping past Windows Defender and VirusTotal detections. So that's a malware family. So we have added Yara rule last month. And the second one, Kematian Stealer. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right way. So a stealer that's relatively new on the scene. So I think it was late June when this was first appear. As an highlight, so it's PowerShell based. It operates in a fileless manner, and it's promoted on GitHub, and it's actually promoted as a tool for system admins and ethical hackers. But of course abused, and it leverages PowerShell to swipe like sensitive data like cookies, passwords, browsing history, and as all stealers do. And some other features include audio recording, taking screenshots. You know, it makes this a comprehensive tool for data theft. And Kematian doesn't just rely on features. It's heavily obfuscated using Somal Obfuscator version 2, making it tough to detect. So the reason, actually, this is the reason we needed a new Yara rule. The attack typically kicks off with an obfuscated batch file, adding another layer of complexity. So despite having its original GitHub page taken down, actually Kematian is far from that. So the developers are actively creating new pages and to keep it alive, and it's really indicating that this stealer is under continuous development and is likely to keep going. So moving on, another one, SOX5 System Z, a proxy botnet malware. So we have some visibility into the number of infections worldwide, thanks to the Shadow Server Foundation and their dashboard. So the number as of yesterday seems to be around 200,000 worldwide, and primarily in Asia, but seems to be reaching far beyond to many countries, as you can see on this slide. So what's significant for sharing here is when you check the analysis reports for this one and extract configurations, so what we see is it is built with a multi-stage C2 infrastructure. So it starts with DNS-based server and transitions to second stage proxy server. So it kind of helps them create a resilient communication channel to become even tougher to disrupt. And another point, interesting, is its use of DGA. So this allows to dynamically generate new domain names for its C2, so making it a moving target. And on the flip side, the actors using this one have gone to the extra mile to monetize it. So they set up a full-fledged proxy service, offering subscriptions, selling it on Telegram. And I mean, obviously for anonymity, this is something to pay for from threat actor perspective. And another one, remote access Trojan, STR-RAT. So this is built on Java, and it's observed to be using obfuscators like Elatori, one it is called, and among others, so making it a real headache to analyze. So we have had to create a new Yara rule just to keep up. And how does it get in? So typically through an email attachment, looks like a business document or receipt. And in the past, it relied on the victim, of course, having Java already installed. And one interesting note is an earlier version, actually, of STR-RAT was observed to be pretending to be ransomware. So it renamed files with a .crimson extension, making victims think they have been hit by a ransom attack, and they see even a text file. So to just drive the point, but the truth is it's all fake, and there is no actual encryption going on. So again, I think they kind of monetization is always part of the game, part of the mind. And moving on to a loader, Latrodectus. So that's quickly gaining traction. It can be also regarded a fresh one, first discovered by Walmart researchers in October last year. And it was found to share a lot of traits, characteristics with iced ID, especially in how it handles comments and encrypted payloads. I mean, which suggests a strong connection between two. And as we know, after the takedown of Europol with Operation Endgame, probably threat actors, instead of iced ID, they would go with Latrodectus more. Also, our labs team is tracking this one, and recently we identified a new version, 1.4, that shows that it's switched its string encryption. So it's moved away from PRNG and XOR string decryption, and now uses AES 256. We also noticed a new RC4 key being used to encrypt C2 traffic. And another interesting development is the switch from the C2 endpoint, like /live to /test. So this suggests that Latrodectus 1.4 is still in the testing phase, and we can likely expect more updates down the road. So just another one we're keeping on the radar. And Luma, so a lot going on about Luma, really, and we would like to look into it. One of the top info stealers out there, right alongside Redline. It's a relatively new player, let's say, not less than a couple of years, but already showing why it's leading the pack. So Luma really just another info stealer when it comes to the capabilities like stealing credentials and cookies, and but it has another capability. It can deliver other malware, so making it a kind of a double threat. And what makes it stand out is its evasion game. You might remember from a previous session how it uses human-like mouse movements and even trigonometric calculations to fool automated analysis tools. So it's really running the extra mile when it comes to evasion. And recently, it's observed using threat actors observed using Luma to exploit the global outage by using Falcon EDR client update as a lure. So it's not just about stealing data. So another interesting point, the Luma infections also paving the way to major data breaches, because the stealer logs from Luma is actually giving access to cloud platforms of some major SaaS providers, where actually enterprises are uploading data. So that's kind of another significant recent information around Luma. And one more thing, Luma gets updated really frequently, and with each update, it's adding new tricks to avoid detection, like even specific checks for some specific sandbox tools. And for example, making indirect syscalls to evade hooking-based analysis tools. You can see here a screenshot, for example, from VirusTotal. So, and also a snapshot from our report. So the VirusTotal detection is as low as 6. So the security tools relying on hooking-based analysis are kind of having difficulty detecting Luma. So now I'm the only one between you and a great demo by Patrick. So with that, I will pass it over to Patrick again.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so before we actually dive into the fun part, into a demonstration of an analysis report for Stealc, maybe also a couple of words of Stealc before that. So I guess Stealc is one of also a well-known stealer and infostealer actually, among others that Ertu mentioned already before, like Luma, also Vida, and we do see quite some common things between some of them. So for Stealc, Luma, and especially also for Vida, we see that all of them making use of legitimate libraries to actually make stealing confidential information from infected systems as easy as possible. So for example, considering browsers are usually storing cookies, session cookies, and even passwords into databases on the local system. So instead of implementing their own parsing logic to extract passwords and cookies from these databases, they just make use of legitimate and already existing libraries that they can use to just parse and carve out this data. Additionally, of course, Stealc has a very interesting technique in also ensuring that an infected system gets only infected a single time. Whereas other malware families usually make use of mutexes in this case, for Stealc, we have seen that after the initial execution, the sample just collects hardware information from this machine, calculates a unique ID, and then just stores this ID remotely on the command and control server. With this, it's likely impossible to, if the device got infected, to infect it a second time, unless, of course, you completely re-image and reinstall the whole machine, because then it might look different. But otherwise, usually Stealc only runs once. And of course, since Stealc has been observed for the first time, which was in early 2023, we have seen a lot of involvements and, of course, a lot of additional improvements and developments, like here recently with the update to version 1.10, which happened in July this year. We have seen a lot of additional improvements for even enhanced callback options. We designed Telegram bot, among others. But so far, so good. Actually, I think it's time now to dive into the demo time. Maybe, Ertu, you can stop screen sharing so that I can start it.
Yes, of course.
That would be great. So I will just share my browser window here. Okay. So yeah, what we're going to look into here right now is a analysis report. To be more precise, a dynamic analysis report for VMRay platform for a Stealc sample. And of course, immediately when looking into this one here, we can already spot, well, it's detected as malicious. And of course, we also have the proper classification that we would expect for a stealer, right? Which is spyware and also stealer. The threat name here that we associate this analysis report to is, of course, Stealc. And also, we have already heard something about Luma before, and also of Vida. Why is that? We'll cover this just in a couple of minutes. If we just go down here and we look into our VMRay threat identifiers, and I guess the majority of the attendees here should be aware of that, but if you are not, which is just like some behavior-based rules that we developed at VMRay to properly detect malicious behavior during the analysis, and also provide you enough information and details in the report to easily understand what is happening. So we can see here quite a lot of different trigger reasons here. We have extracted configurations. We also see error matches here, as mentioned for Stealc, for Luma, for Vida. We even see the anti-analysis detection here that Ertu already mentioned before. That seems to be very common in Luma samples, that they are making use of indirect system calls just to evade hooking-based monitoring for sandboxes and also EDR systems. However, I think the most important things here, especially what we would expect from a stealer point of view, is data collection discovery. So we can see here we have a combination of detections that shows multiple input capture behaviors. We can see its screenshot. It tries to capture keystrokes. If we look down here, we see additional ones. It tries to capture clipboard data. It's reading sensitive browser information, which of course can be session cookies and passwords. It even searches for cryptocurrency wallets, among others, right? So that's, of course, the expected behavior we would see for such a stealer. If we go a bit further down, we can also see here the overview of the monitored processes, and we can see that there's quite a lot of things going on in this analysis report. You can see here there's an early process injection, then there are some other processes being spawned, followed by another injections. However, as we have seen before, if we've mentioned before, Stealc also received an update just recently Of course, we also catched up on this and provided an update to our malware configuration extractor for Stealc. So if we just look into the extraction here, we can see we provide here the most valuable high quality IOCs, which for Stealc is usually the IP address of the command and control server. Whereas recently, Stealc was usually known to use RC4 for encrypting internal strings. We also have observed some strange behavior in recent samples before the update actually happened, whereas they still contained the whole logic for decrypting strings based on RC4. It also even had the RC4 encryption key within the samples, but strings were just not encrypted at all. They were just plain text. And then in July, we actually have seen the update where they switched the encryption algorithm from RC4 to something which is known as one-time pad. So instead of using RC4, they now rely on one-time pad, which basically just uses an XOR operation in the background. And each string that is embedded within this Stealc binary is encrypted by a unique key. So in this case, of course, we provided an update to our config extractor to decrypt the strings and to provide you with the most valuable information here. Additionally, to the command and control server, we also provide an expiration date, which is kind of interesting if you want to track Stealc samples, because that usually means whenever this date exceeds, the sample is no longer supposed to be executed. So if we know that Stealc seems to be a stealer and it's supposed to, of course, collect data and also exfiltrates data, I want you to provide you some additional information here on how we can use VMRay reports to just investigate and maybe get a bit of an overview on what is happening here behind the background. So looking into our network tab here, where we capture and present all of the network communication that we have seen, if we go down here to the IP address that you've seen before, which is known to be the command and control server for the Stealc sample, we see there are a lot of GET requests, there are some POST requests, and we even see here the GET request to download one of the known legitimate libraries that Stealc just uses to steal and collect the data. So I will just pick one of them here because, as mentioned, it's supposed, or we can guess that Stealc somehow needs to exfiltrate data as well. If you just look into this one here, we can see in the request information that there is some additional fields within this request. We see token, we see a file name, and we also see file itself. So just looking into the PCAP stream, where we can see that roughly a bit more than 1,000 bytes have been submitted to the remote server, which is, I think, quite interesting and definitely worth to take a closer look into. We can also see the same fields that we have seen before in the requests before there. We see the token, we see a file name, and further below, we also see even a file. So when looking into this data, the file name, and this one here, seems to be, at least to me, it looks like it's base64 encoded, right? So I'm just not going over to CyberChef here, just paste the data in. I have prepared a very small receipt that just replaces some control characters and decodes the data. We can see this results in a string called soft outlook and accounts.txt. So I'm really wondering what this file might supposed to contain. I guess based on the name, we can already have some speculations what is happening here, but just to ensure, we will just also copy the content here that is being sent to the command and control server and also paste this in here to this receipt. And we see indeed that this file seems to contain information that has been exfiltrated from the analysis VM and is being sent to the remote server. We see here some email accounts that are being configured for Outlook probably. We see here the email address, a name, the mail servers, and we can even see the password that is being used for this email account. So just by looking into the analysis report and just following the data that we see, it's very easy just to spot all of this additional behavior. One thing else that I would quickly like to cover, if we go back here into the Yara tab, we see here, of course, matches for Loma and also for Vida, right? So I'm curious where those files have been coming from, because we usually just looked into a Stealc sample, but not really a Loma sample nor a Vida sample. So I will just pick Loma here for demonstration purpose, and we see that the Yara rule matched in a memory dump of process 17. So if we just go to our behavior tab here, and we look into this process overview again, we see, well, process 17 has been executed by process 12, which came from process 8, which came from process 4. And based on what we have already seen before, we know process 4 is essentially the execution of Stealc. So the file that is being executed here, this 38 something af.exe, has to somehow being either dropped or downloaded onto the analysis machine here, right? So I will just quickly go to process 4, and indeed we can see here already there was a downloaded file. And if we just look into this, we see indeed this is those two files here, whereas I think the second one is here, this af.exe, which seems to execute via Stealer. And if we just go down to the processes here, we can also see that 2 additional processes have been created based on cmd.exe. They just used the command and argument and executed this dropped file and also the other dropped file. So we know that in this case, Stealc also dropped 2 additional payloads, whereas both Lummer and Vida are just some stealers, which is interesting and looks like to me they want to ensure to steal and collect as much as information as possible from this infection here. And finally, I would like to highlight, of course, we also have config extraction for Lummer and Vida among Stealc. And Lummer is very interesting when it comes to command and control server communication, because usually malware often uses just a single embedded command and control server, or maybe even not a single, but multiple embedded IP addresses for command and control servers. And this is then indeed the proper URL or IP that they have to communicate to. Vida actually uses a multi-stage approach here, and instead of directly seeing the original IP address of the command and control server, they are actually communicating first with something that seems to be a legitimate URL, right? So t.me is just the URL for the Telegram Messenger, and Steam community, of course, is associated with Steam, the gaming platform in the end. So we flag those here as first stage C2 servers. What does this mean? Well, Vida just has those strings embedded in their binaries, and during the analysis, they just reach out to those URLs and try to collect the actual command and control server IP. So how do they do this? I will just quickly show this here as well. I've just picked here the second one, this Telegram profile of Jamal WT, and I just also use VMRay platform to quickly fire this URL off in a web analysis, because I was curious what is on this web page, what can I see there, of course, without manually needing to interact with some binaries on my local machine. So I'm using the web analysis here, and I'm just mainly interested here in the screenshots that are taken during the analysis. And indeed, what we can see here is if you go to the profile of this Telegram user, there's a profile description, and this description just contains the IP address of the second stage command and control server. Same, of course, also applies for the Steam profiles. So what they're doing is they are just trying to only embed legitimate looking URLs in their binaries to get around not getting detected, and then reach out to these legitimate services to collect this HTML page there and then pass out this actual command and control server IP. And in our analysis report, of course, we have this behavior monitored as well. We extract here the first stage C2 servers, first stage C2 server, and then of course we also extract the IP address of the second stage C2 server. And if you say, well, it's the 147 and ends with 138, if we go to the network tab here as well, we can also see that, of course, there is the request to the Telegram user account, and later on we can also see that there is the command and control server communication with the actual command and control server. And in this case, it already looks quite similar to the one that we've seen from Stealc. There are some get and post requests. It downloads additional libraries and then starts to exfiltrate the data. And of course, all of the information that we are collecting here is also available in our IOCs tab, where we just highlight the most important IOCs that can be used to further process it, can be used to feed threat intelligence systems, and so on and so forth. And just within a couple of minutes, you are able to get all of this data, either via automated submissions or via manual submissions. Well, that's being everything from my side, as we anyways slowly coming to an end of the webinar. And with this, I would like to hand the microphone back to Ertuğ.
Thank you, Patrick. A great demo. And it's always good to see new config extractors. as part of the platform. So yeah, we are coming to the end of the webinar. I just would like to share the resources that we used while preparing for this webinar. There's a great community out there, and we are really happy to be part of this community. There are great write-ups around each of them, each specific malware family that we mentioned today. And there are some sample analysis reports, so we can share this right after the webinar with registrants. So we wanted to share, if you want to take a look, if you want to check out yourself, some of these, you can check out. And yeah, with that, we can move on to the Q&A. Actually, I've seen a question, one question, Patrick. I think this is for you. About general usage of VMRay, is it possible to get basic static information such as imports, import hash, strings? A question. Yeah. And just dropping a note, if it's already implemented, then I haven't found it yet.
Yes, of course, I can also then anyways write the answer to the chat, but I can also quickly answer it here right now, I think. Yeah, so this essentially is implemented. So the basic information such as getting the imported modules and also the imported API functions, as well as the import hashes should be there. So you can either find them on the static analysis report, on the files tab for the file that you're actually going to look into. And also, of course, on the dynamic analysis report, same thing. If you just open the report and you go to the files tab, then you just expand the details of the file that you want to look into this. There should be something which is called, I think, PE information. And there you should see at least all the hashes, import hashes, imported modules, and also API functions. What does not exist currently, I think, is the extraction of the strings. But of course, we are happy to take this feedback with us and also report this to our development teams to, of course, improve in the future.
Perfect. I would like to add one. Okay, let me check if there is other. Yes. This is okay. Do we have roadmap for year 2025 for advancement of VMRay as tool, its functionality? All right, perfect. So yes, we have a roadmap, and we actually regularly we want to share this with our customers. So if you are somehow in touch with the account managers, I think they would be happy to set up a call to walk through this roadmap. If you're not yet a customer, feel free to reach out, and we can again set up a call to go through what kind of updates we will roll out. And I think this is a good question to make the transition to the to wrap up. So this webinar series is regular. So every month we are happy to do this. We are sharing some updates regarding the product as well as the threat landscape. So and there will be another one next month. So feel free to register and feel free to invite your other colleagues, friends, family. And yeah, well, with that, I would like to wrap up. Thank you, everybody.